Now, the title of this book will grab you. It is Faith, Purpose, and Politics, Running the Race of My Life. Immediately, I was captivated. Tell me about how you chose your title.
Oh, I don't think I chose this title. It just came to me, and because I know I was in the race of my life.
All right, we're going to start off with tracking Trump's cabinet confirmations so far. This is an article from The Guardian. So let's see what it says. It says Donald Trump's picks for top posts in his administration have tested the loyalty of Senate Republicans. It says Senate confirmation hearings are underway for Donald Trump's cabinet nominations. All cabinet level positions require a majority vote of senators to be approved. With the current 53-seat Republican majority, Trump's more fraught nominees can only afford to lose 3 Republican senators, assuming Democrats are uniformly opposed. It says Marco Rubio was the first cabinet appointee to win confirmation, skating through with a unanimous vote in his favor. John Ratcliffe, Pete Hegseth, and Kristi Noem have also secured confirmation, with Hegseth requiring Vice President J.D. Vance to cast a tie-breaking vote. So here we are. Here's the confirmation of Marco Rubio as the Secretary of State. We have the confirmation of John Ratcliffe as the CIA Director. We have the confirmation of Pete Hegseth as the Secretary of Defense. We have the confirmation of Kristi Noem for Homeland Security Secretary. So we have 4 that have been confirmed thus far, with many more to go. We have Pam Bodie for Attorney General, Doug Collins, Veteran Affairs Secretary, Elise Stefanik, UN Ambassador, Russ Vaught, Office of Management and Budget Chief, Brooke Rollins, Secretary of Agriculture, Sean Duffy, Secretary of Transportation, Chris White, Energy Secretary, Doug Burgum, Interior Secretary, Lee Zeldin, EPA Administrator, Scott Turner, Department of Housing and Urban Development Chief, Scott Bissett, Treasury Secretary, Howard Lutnick, Commerce Secretary, Lori Chavez DeRemer, Labor Secretary, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Secretary of Health and Human Services, Linda McMahon, Education Secretary, Tulsi Gabbard, National Intelligence Director, Jameson Greer, U.S. Trade Representative, Kelly Loeffler, Administrator of the Small Business Administration, Mehmet, y'all, I butcher names. Mehmet Oz, Dr. Oz as we all know him, Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services Administrator, Brendan Carr, Chair of the Federal Communications Commission, and Kash Patel as the FBI Director. So we are looking again at the 4 confirmations that we have, and we have many more that are to come. So just wanted to give you heads up on where we are in this new administration with confirmations and the remaining nominations. All right. Also want to bring you our next tab. Hold on a second. Let me change my screen here. All right, let me bring you the committee meetings that are coming up. All right, on January the 29th, this coming Wednesday at 9 a.m., we have a business meeting to consider the nomination of Pamela Bondi of Florida to be Attorney General, Department of Justice. Again on Wednesday, January 29th, 10 a.m., hearing to examine the nomination of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. of California to be Secretary of Health and Human Services. January 29th, 10 a.m., third meeting, business meeting to consider committee rules for the 119th Congress, to be immediately followed by a hearing to examine the nomination of Howard Lutnick of New York to be Secretary of Commerce. January the 29th at 2:30, hearing to examine the nomination of Kelly Loeffler of Georgia to be Administrator of the Small Business Administration. January 29th, 3:30 p.m., hearings to examine making Washington work for seniors, focusing on fighting to end inflation and achieve fiscal sanity. January 30th at noon, business meeting to consider the nomination of Russell Vaught of Virginia to be Director of the Office of Management and Budget. January 30th, 9:30 a.m., hearing to examine the nomination of Kashyap Patel of Nevada to be the Director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, Department of Justice. January 30th, 9:30 a.m., hearings to examine the nomination of Daniel Driscoll of North Carolina to be Secretary of the Army Department of Defense. January 30th, 10 o'clock a.m., hearings to examine the nomination of Tulsi Gabbard of Hawaii to be Director of National Intelligence, to be immediately followed by a closed hearing in SH 219. January 30th, again, 10 a.m. It's a busy day on January 30th. Hearings to examine the nomination of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. of California to be Secretary of Health and Human Services. It's 2 hearings for RFK, y'all, 2 hearings. Another meeting, committee meeting, business meeting to consider the nomination of Elsie Stefanik of New York to be the representative of the United States of America to the United Nations. So that's happening on January the 30th. January 30th, again, hearing to examine the influence of the People's Republic of China at home and abroad, focusing on recommendations for policymakers. Committee hearing on February the 4th to receive a closed briefing on certain intelligence matters. So that's on February the 4th, 2:30 p.m., a closed briefing on certain intelligence matters. February the 5th, 10 o'clock a.m., Hope on the Horizon, prioritizing small business growth in the 119th Congress. Again, that's February the 5th, prioritizing small business growth in the 119th Congress. February the 5th, again, to receive a closed briefing on certain intelligence matters. Keeping up with Congress. Keeping up with Congress. We got to be a part of these meetings. We can't miss a beat, y'all. We cannot miss a beat. All right, let's dive into these bills. Senate Bill 5 is the Laken-Riley Act. The Laken-Riley Act. For those of you who may not know who Laken-Riley was, so Congress passes the Laken-Riley Act, an early win for Trump on immigration. The U.S. Congress has passed a bill requiring undocumented immigrants who are arrested for theft or violent crimes to be held in jail pending trial. The bill, named after Laken-Riley, a Georgia nursing student murdered last year by a Venezuelan man, passed the House of Representatives a day after it was approved by the Senate. The measure cruised through the House by a vote of 263 to 156. 46 Democrats defied their party leadership and crossed the political aisle to support the Republican-led measure. In the Senate, 12 Democrats gave their support to the bill. It now heads to the White House for President Trump to sign into law. So that was the Laken-Riley Act. It's the first bill to be introduced, passed by the House and by the Senate and is now on the desk of the president to be signed. The Lincoln-Riley Act. Senate Bill number 6, Born Alive Abortion Survivors Protection Act, introduced by Senator Langford, Republican out of Oklahoma. Senate Bill number 9, Protection of Women and Girls in Sports Act of 2025. Sponsor was the Senator Tuberville, Republican out of Alabama. Senate Bill 21, the Remote Act, remote work, introduced by Senator Ernst, Republican out of Iowa. The Swamp Act. They were talking about draining the swamp. Actually, Senate Bill number 22 and Senate Bill number 23. The Swamp Act, the Drain the Swamp Act. Senator Ernst, again, Republican out of Iowa. Senate Bill number, and I've been going through them to make sure that I can bring you the most pressing or more relevant. A bill to require the disclosure of a camera, Senate Bill number 28. A bill to require the disclosure of a camera or recording capability in certain internet connected devices. So it's a bill to require the disclosure of a camera or recording capability in certain internet connected devices. Senator Ted Cruz, Republican out of Texas. Senate Bill number 29. Senate Bill number 29 is a bill to make daylight savings time permanent. Daylight savings time to be permanent. I don't know how y'all feel about that, but Senator Rick Scott, Republican out of Florida. All right, Senate Bill number 36. Senate Bill number 36. It's a bill to protect the seniors of the United States. A bill to protect the seniors. Y'all, these bills, I'm going to click, and as you can see when you click, for those of you that are watching this on the internet, a lot of the language isn't there yet. The text, let's see if this is one where we have some text. Nope, not yet. It says as of today, the text has not been received for Senate Bill 36. So there's a backlog with actually receiving, us viewing what these bills specifically say. But guess what? We're still keeping up with Congress. So when the legislation, the language is there, we can go back and read it for ourselves. So let's keep up with Congress. Senate Bill number 36, a bill to protect the seniors of the United States, something we need to pay attention to. Senate Bill number 38 is a bill to amend Title 18, the United States Code, to penalize false communications to cause an emergency response. So this is a bill introduced again, Senator Rick Scott, Republican out of Florida, to penalize false communications to cause an emergency response. Senate Bill number 38. Senate Bill 40. Senate Bill 40. A bill to address the fundamental injustice, cruelty, brutality, inhumanity of slavery in the United States and the 13 American colonies between 1619 and 1865, and to establish a commission to study and consider a national apology and proposal for reparations for the institution of slavery, its subsequent de jure and de facto racial and economic discrimination against African Americans, and the impact of these forces on living African Americans, to make recommendations to the Congress on appropriate remedies and other purposes. Introduced by Senator Cory Booker, Democrat out of New Jersey. Reparations. Senate Bill 42. Senate Bill 42, a bill to establish the Southern Border Wall Construction Fund and to transfer unobligated amounts from the coronavirus state and local fiscal recovery funds to such funds to construct and maintain physical barriers along the southern border. So that's Senator John Barrasso, Senator John Barrasso, Republican out of Wyoming. Senate Bill 45. Senate Bill 45 is a bill to reduce a portion of the annual pay of members of Congress for the failure to adopt a concurrent resolution on the budget, which does not provide for a balanced budget and other purposes. So this is a bill that will reduce their money. They don't get paid until they balance that budget. They're going to have some monies taken. Interesting. Senator Daines, I'm not mad at you, sir. Senator Daines, Republican out of Montana. Senate Bill 48. Senate Bill 48 is a bill to establish a federal grant program to combat the smuggling and trafficking of children and young women. So that's introduced by Senator Blackburn, Marsha Blackburn, Senator Republican out of Tennessee. Senate Bill 51. Senate Bill 51 is a bill to provide for the admission of the state of Washington, D.C. into the Union. Quite interesting. Senator Van Holden, Chris Van Holden, making Washington, D.C. an official part of the Union. Senate Bill 51. Senate Bill 52 is a bill to amend the Immigration and Nationality Act to require a DNA test to determine the familiarity, and that's a Spanish word, means family relationship between an alien and an accompanying minor. So this is a bill that requires a DNA to determine whether or not these children that are accompanying aliens are actually theirs. Interesting. Senator Blackburn, Marsha Blackburn, Senator Republican out of Tennessee. Senate Bill 53. Senate Bill 53, a bill to require the Secretary of Homeland Security to fingerprint non-citizen minors entering the United States who are suspected of being victims of human trafficking, to require the Secretary to publicly disclose the number of such minors who are fingerprinted by U.S. Customs and Border Protection, CBP, officials, and the number of child traffickers who are apprehended by CBP, to impose criminal penalties on non-citizen adults who use unrelated minors to gain entry into the United States. So yeah, they're cracking down on these children that are possibly being human trafficked. Yeah, good legislation. Marsha Blackburn, Republican out of Tennessee. Senate Bill 55 is a bill to preserve the constitutional authority of Congress and to ensure accountability and transparency in legislation. Senate Bill 55. Rand Paul, Republican from the state of Kentucky. Senate Bill 56. Senate Bill 56 is a bill to amend the Agriculture Act of 2014 with respect to the ACER Access and Development Program and for other purposes. And I was interested and curious to know the ACER Access Program. So I looked it up. The ACER Access and Development Program is a competitive grant program that promotes the domestic maple syrup industry through activities associated with research and education related to maple syrup production, natural resource sustainability in the maple syrup industry, and the marketing of maple syrup and maple sap products. So I was just curious because, when you don't know, you have to look it up. So the maple syrup industry, their lobbyists are serious. They got their legislation introduced, and they're going to make sure that maple syrup has the funding it needs. And I say that because the next bill, this bill was introduced by Senator Welch, a Democrat from the state of Vermont. But the next bill, Senate Bill 57, is a bill to amend the Farm Security and Rural Investment Act of 2022 to include maple syrup under the Seniors Farmers Market Nutrition Program. So the Seniors Farmers Market Nutrition Program will now include maple syrup. Senator Welch, Democrat, Vermont. See, this is how legislation and gets passed. You got to have the people. You got to have people in Washington. You got to be in the know to be in the number. So maple syrup now is being legislated in a way that it is will have opportunities. You know, again, this is why we keep up with Congress. If you want something done, you got to get on the inside. So I'm going to keep going. I'm going to try to stay off my opinions, but yeah. I like maple syrup too. But we just see how this works, right? That's my point. I just want you to see how this all works. So Senate Bill number 59. It's a bill to end the practice of including more than one subject in a single bill by requiring that each bill enacted by Congress be limited to only one subject and for other purposes. So a bill to end the practice of including more than one subject in a single bill. So all these bills that have all these, these issues, just, these, yeah. Let us be able to read the bill, follow the bill, and have one subject in a bill. Rand Paul, Republican, Kentucky. Senate Bill 60. Senate Bill 60 is a bill to end the unconstitutional delegation of legislative power, which was exclusively vested in the Senate and House of Representatives by Article 1, Section 1 of the Constitution of the United States, and to direct the Comptroller General of the United States to issue a report to Congress detailing the extent of the problem of unconstitutional delegation to the end that such delegation can be phased out, thereby restoring the constitutional principle of separation of powers set forth in the first sections of the Constitution of the United States. Rand Paul, Republican, Kentucky. And I know that was a lot, but you got to realize I do like policy. I like to read policy. And so, of course, I looked it up so that I can bring you a better definition of what this all means. So here it is. Unconstitutional delegation of legislative power occurs when Congress gives up its lawmaking authority to another branch of government or private entity. This violates the separation of powers principle in the Constitution. So it is, Rand Paul is saying, this unconstitutional delegation of legislative power needs to be stopped. So it wasn't as complicated as it sounds. It's a bill to end this unconstitutional delegation of legislative power. So Rand Paul is trying to clean up some stuff. I'll get back on track here. So Senate Bill number 61. Senate Bill number 61 is a bill to establish a national human trafficking database at the Office for Victims of Crime of the Department of Justice, and to incentivize certain state agencies to report data to the database. So this is Marsha Blackburn, again, Republican from the state of Tennessee. Senate Bill number 62. Senate Bill number 62 is a bill to limit eligibility for federal benefits for certain immigrants. This is Senator Lee, Republican from the state of Utah. Senate Bill number 63, a bill to amend the Chemical and Biological Weapons Control and Warfare Elimination Act of 1991 to impose sanctions on foreign countries in response to acts concerning chemical or biological programs that cause injury to other foreign countries. So it's a bill to amend the Chemical and Biological Weapons Control and Warfare Elimination Act. Senator Banks, he's a Republican out of the state of, what's that, Indiana? Yeah, Indiana. Senate Bill 65. Senate Bill 65 is a bill to allow reciprocity for the carrying of certain concealed firearms. Senate Bill 65, a bill to allow reciprocity for the carrying of certain concealed firearms. And I did look this up because, I thought, gun rights is something I think most people are very interested in. This is Senator Corn, and I'm probably saying his name wrong, Cornyn, Cornyn, Republican from the state of Texas. So in this bill, this will be my last one for today, keeping up with Congress, U.S. Senator John Boozman, Republican, Arizona, and John Cornyn, Republican out of Texas, introduced the Constitutional Concealed Carry Reciprocity Act, which would allow individuals with concealed carry privileges in their home state to exercise those rights in other states that allow concealed carry while still abiding by the state laws. So he says, I am proud to support Americans' constitutional rights to bear arms, said Boozman. Says this legislation is a common sense solution to protect concealed carry privilege across all 50 states and uphold the right of lawful, responsible gun owners. This bill goes on to say that the background on the Constitutional Concealed Reciprocity Act, it allows individuals with concealed carry privileges in their home state to exercise those rights in other states with concealed carry laws. It treats state-issued concealed carry permits like a driver's license, where an individual can use their home state license to drive in other state, but must abide by that other state's speed limit or road laws. And it protects the state's sovereignty by not establishing a national standard for concealed carry. So this legislation is endorsed by the NRA, the National Rifle Association, the National Shooting Sports Foundation, and the Gun Owners of America. So this is a bill that will, again, allow individuals with concealed carry privileges in their home state to exercise those rights in any other state that allows concealed carry. So legislation, y'all. We got to keep our eyes on Congress. That was Senate Bill number 65.